G'day there, it's Dave here, Dave Mills, with another exciting video. I want to talk to you about obviously the three types of acceleration. Now it's black to play. The side, I always want to, in these problems, have it so that the side to move is the side in the bottom moving upwards. You know, that sense of forward movement. And looking at this position here, we see once again see that the king doesn't have a knight at f3. That immediately is a warning flag. We also, we want to build our momentum, and obviously a major center of gravity. One is the center. So like a knight to e4 is a great move. Also we have the fact is that h2 is, we have ideas of bishop takes h2 because the h2 pawn is semi-loose, and that's a major center of gravity to attack the king. So you want to build. How can you build the most momentum? Momentum is the value of the piece by its activity, but you want to build that momentum towards centers of gravity. So there's the back rank, there's the center, and there's the king. So and often they all go together. So we also see in white's position that knight is a weak piece. It's a loose piece. Nothing is defending it. We also see in this position that the dark square bishop is not active. It's not doing its thing, and now we got two. We got that h2 is obviously weak, and we got that knight at c3. So have you seen the move? Yes, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same idea as the last problem. It's the exact same idea. And you want to obviously conserve as much momentum as possible. You want to, with the minimum effort of tempo to complete your development, to attack. So acceleration is the tempo and plus the direction, or threats, checks, and captures. Like where's it going and what is it doing? How long does it take to get there and what is it doing? So I'm going to talk to you about, so we know acceleration is a change of velocity, right? It's a change of velocity is basically where you can a change of velocity is where you can, forgive me for having a bit of a brain fart there. A change of velocity is an important component of things, right? You want to do it in the least amount of tempo, one move being preferable, and you want to then have that direction, threats, checks, and captures. Here it's obvious. Queen to c7 it builds the momentum. Remember, we had the queen to the bishop, so it's actually threatening checkmate, and it's actually quite devastating. And so the queen and the bishop, the value of the queen is 9, the bishop's 3.5, so that's 12.5 by the squares in their half of the board, which is the 3. And the three most important ones is that gravity, that major gravity at that king. So it definitely definitely accelerates everything and affects the momentum in a real way. So the three accelerations, one is when you're able to increase your velocity, your speed. You're able to accelerate because of threats, checks, and captures. Like it's like an immediate way of accelerating. So imagine a car is traveling down a road and it's going at 50 kilometers an hour. It's not accelerating. Okay, that car is not accelerating. It's only when it's changing velocity, when it's moving between say 50 and 60 kilometers, when it's accelerating forwards, that's when it's accelerating. And your position is not accelerating without that forcing moves, without threats, checks, and captures. So, because and if you want to understand that change of velocity, just think tempo, gaining tempo, and also the direction, threats, checks, and captures. Change of velocity and acceleration, obviously all in the same the same line of attack. So obviously it increases your speed. So that's the first easy way of thinking of acceleration. That's the way I've basically described it in these videos. But there's also, did you know that if you hit the brakes, you're actually retarding the speed. The speed's going from, say, 50 down to 40 kilometers an hour. So the car, that's actually another form of acceleration. So retardation, when you are preventing their acceleration, you're actually accelerating your position. So this is important. This is number 2 of acceleration. When you're accelerating, and you're attacking, that's an easy way of thinking of accelerating. But actually, when you're retarding their ability to threats, checks, and captures, you're slowing down their tempo. If it's going to take, if their knight is getting trapped on the edge of the board, that's great, because it's going to take them an extra 2 moves to rescue the knight and bring it back to the action. So or if they've kept moving the same piece twice, okay, in the opening, that's great for you. That they're actually retarding their position. They're not. They can do it to themselves. Okay, and the terrible development can also de-accelerate their position. But that's a form of acceleration. Retardation is a form of acceleration. So that's actually just as important. Hitting the brakes is just as important as hitting the accelerator, and it's the same thing. It's change of velocity. Okay, so change of velocity, and you're accelerating through threats, checks, and captures. Number 1. Number 2, change of velocity by retarding their activity, retarding their ability to do threats, checks, and captures. All right. Remember, velocity is tempo plus direction, so it's also retarding their tempo. Okay. Now, the third and final type of acceleration, which you may not know is an acceleration, is actually a change of the direction of attack. Okay. So imagine a car that's going at 50 kilometers again. When it goes around the bend at 50 kilometers an hour, because it's changing the direction of the car, it's changing even though its speed has maintained at 50, it's actually changed its velocity. Okay, and that's what acceleration of your pieces is and your position is. Okay, it's a change. So you're attacking one way and then you're attacking another way. And by thinking about it like that, you're actually, by alternating. Okay, this is called alternation. So we got acceleration, which is I like to call that the acceleration 1. It's the most obvious way of accelerating your position. Threats, checks, and captures. And queen to c7 in this position is obviously threatening, to checkmate. So that's a pretty big threat. Okay, so you're obviously accelerating your position, but also obviously that also affects your momentum and vice versa. So obviously the queen is one of the primary moves in the DMT, the development momentum theory of chess, is that you're obviously you look to create the most momentum with the most powerful pieces downwards, okay? So, with this position here, queen to c7 is a fantastic move because it's connecting it's actually connecting with gravity wells. It's actually connecting with the forces of the board. Okay, so that knight is obviously going to drop off. That knight is doomed, and because obviously the opponent will choose to save the king, so the third and last way to accelerate your position is, obviously you need to change that velocity, so tempo and direction. And sometimes that means you give up tempos. Okay, so sometimes it's actually better to have two knights on one side of the board to launch your attack against the king. Okay, that's actually weighting the board on one side. You're actually putting the numbers in your favor against the king, and but that actually might take 2 moves, or even 3 moves. So the alternation, change of direction of attack can sometimes mean your queen is alternating between both sides of the board against 2 weaknesses in the end game, and you just crack. Or so it can mean that change of direction, but it also can mean that you're giving up tempos, in closed positions, particularly to change the direction of the attack. So suddenly now you're going to launch your pawns down on the king side, even with that extra knight that you've redeployed to the king side. So if you've got in closed positions, you can have time, but if it's the reverse in open positions, it's you want to you absolutely need to accelerate your position, centralize your position, and definitely point at the king. So whereas in closed positions you can change the direction of attack, you can take that bend, and you can spend some tempos pushing those pawns. You want to play with your pawns in closed positions. Okay, so you've got that tempo, you've got that time, but you don't have that time in the first case, in the open center. So and also in half open centers, retardation can be a huge thing. So retardation, closing off entry squares, actually controlling the center, fighting for the center, trying to create like a really equal and opposite forces. Retardation is a very, very important part of it, because obviously another way of thinking of velocity is activity, or more specifically, has to do with the momentum. So obviously in the DMT, the development momentum theory of chess, a bit of a mouthful to say, you can calculate things, acceleration, you can actually calculate things. I always say positive direction is obviously when you're going forwards, neutral direction is sideways, and negative direction is backwards. And so sometimes in chess you have to think in different directions, neutral and negative, not just positive. And obviously velocity is, the tempo or speed plus the direction, which we've said are threats, checks, and captures, and also the divided by the time, like how much it's going to take. And so yeah, there you go. The three types of acceleration, they all have to do with a change of velocity, and in one move here you can see, using this as an example, you can actually see, and it's the same as the previous example. That's what I mean by pattern recognition. And so there you have it. All right, take care. We're going to talk about forces, we're going to talk about conservation of tempo, and we're going to get stuck into the DMT. All right, take care. Bye.